And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Neil Koepke, the great Neil Koepke, the best college hockey writer of all time. Great to have him here once again. Audio is not at its best. A little bit of a satellite thing going on. That's what we'll call it. It's not its best, but hockey.
Exactly.
It was playoff hockey tonight in Munn Ice Arena, Michigan State, 2-1 over the upstart Ohio State Buckeyes, your alma mater.
So yeah,
And fittingly, it was a goaltender battle today.
it was.
We got a lot to talk about. First
Played
of
a
all,
lot better than I ever did. I'll tell you
well,
that.
I don't know. I heard he was pretty good back in the old days. But I tell you what, Augustine was great today, and the crowd. We'll talk about the crowd.
The crowd
first.
was super.
The scene, after the game, Nightingale was talking about, who in the locker room goes back the longest. And they talked about Brad Fast.
Yeah.
He played here around 2001, 2002, I think. And Brad said it's the loudest he's ever seen it. I'm going to ask you in a moment, because you've been here more games than anybody in the building. But it really struck me when it was over and the crowd sang the fight song when the game was over. And I'm like, I'm not sure I've ever heard the fight song sung that loudly here. I'm not going to say all 6,000 were singing the fight song, but I'm going to tell you more than 4,000 of them were singing the words, and it rang out. And yeah, it was lit all game. But after the game, the way the fight song was sung, I've never heard it like that here. What about you, Neil Koepke? You've seen thousands of games here.
I know it. I go back to maybe 1984, 85, 86 when Ron first started it, when Michigan State used to kill a two-man power play on the other team, and the crowd would go berserk. And I always said, if you want to get the crowd at Munn fired up, take 2 penalties and kill them, because the crowd just lifts out of its seats. I'd say they're almost like more loud than they were when they score a goal. But I'd have to go back to that like 85, 86 era where Michigan State was one of the best teams in the country. Didn't win it in 85, won it in 86. And then we're back there in 87 with another good team. But tonight was special because it hasn't been this loud in many, many, many years. And the crowd was super, especially staying when the game was over, saluting the team, and even staying as they skated around and touched the glass in front of the student section. And when they announced the 3 stars. So it was just, this crowd does not want to leave. They're having so much fun.
It was special. I remember back in 1990 when they used to play the NCAA tournament at home rinks.
Yeah.
I think there was an overtime victory over Boston College here. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah, on Easter Sunday.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
1989.
It was a Sunday afternoon.
Yep. And
that was loud.
That was loud. Mark Kerr scored the winning goal on a face-off. And I jokingly said, Mark, you saved me $1,000 because I was going to the tournament, the NCAA, pay my own way if State wasn't there. They were there. The Lansing State Journal paid my way. So to this day, when I see him, I basically remind him of that.
That's good times, good times. And, even coming into the rink today, there was a buzz. I got here maybe about 5-10 minutes before face-off. I'd like to get here earlier, but just couldn't make it happen. But there was a buzz. And no pun intended, but I saw a lot of the beer was flowing, Neil.
It was. The beer lines were good, yeah.
And there was an energy, there was a buzz, and it was playoff hockey. So there's spring in the air, which is playoff time if you've been around hockey a long time. And it's Munn like I hadn't seen it in a long time.
And I walked around between first and second periods, and this place was jammed between the lines for the bathrooms, the lines for the refreshment stand, and the beer stand. And I could hardly get from one side of the rink to the other in 15 minutes. And then when I got around the side, I ran into a former Spartan from 1984 to 1987, Tom Tilley, a great defenseman.
Oh, yeah.
He recognized me, he had his kid with him, and we stopped and talked and went by the base here, watched 2 goals for the Spartans. One was called back, but the other was good, and we just had the great time. And I said, I'm having better luck down here watching goals than I was in the press box.
Right.
But that sort of, and you could just feel the atmosphere, the intensity. When they scored that second goal, then it was called off, and it was 1-0 for a long, long time until the early third. But you could just feel the intensity in the building.
Intensity.
And then when Ohio State sort of tied it up at 2-2, you felt another drop. But then there was a review, and the review said it was offside, no goal, 2-1, and the Spartans hang on. I never would have thought it would be a 2-1 final. I thought more 4-2, a little more scoring, but both goaltenders were outstanding, as you mentioned.
Now, one more thing about the crowd. I don't know if you noticed this, but there were a few Michigan State basketball players here.
Yeah, I did. And Tom Izzo was in the suite.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay, so Hogard and Walker, I think, were there for sure. Cohen Carr. And
you're sitting with the Munsters, right?
Right, Trey,
the student section.
Right, and Trey Holloman was here, and Garrick Normand and Jeremy Fears. At one point, Trey Holloman, who wears number 5, he was wearing a number 5 Michigan State jersey. And when they were coming out to skate before the second period, when Michigan State was, down in that end before before the beginning of the second period. Holloman was in first row of the Munsters, pounded on the glass, turning around. He had a number 5 because he's number 5.
Sure.
To Levshnoff, he was telling Levshnoff, he's like, I got number 5 too. I couldn't see whether it said Levshnoff on the back, but anyway, top to bottom, great night on campus, great day on campus, great game, and the team responded. They hadn't played in 2 weeks.
Right.
Everybody's wondering about rust. Augustine got some work early in the game, which probably helped him out. I don't know. He had to make a nice save on a backhand, but Augustine tonight gives up 1 goal. Had one that went through that was reviewed,
disallowed.
That one was off a deflection off Sturbach, I think. But your thoughts about Augustine? First star tonight, the freshman goalie.
Oh yeah, he was sensational, and I kept saying, well, the way this game's going, he's going to have to be great. He's going to have to make every big save. And I thought in the last minute and a half when they pulled the goalie that Ohio State would get more pressure and have more chances. That's where the Spartans were the best in the last minute and a half when they were blocking shots, getting the puck out, and just dumping them out. A couple icings too, but I thought Augustine was just the best player for the Spartans overall. I thought there was a lot of helter-skelter play by Michigan State in their own zone. And that can't happen next week against Minnesota or Michigan because they'll take advantage of it. Ohio State is good, they're on a roll, but they're not as gifted offensively as the 2 teams that may be playing the Michigan State Spartans next weekend. So that concerned me a little bit. But Augustine is there when those guys are making mistakes. Those guys aren't getting the puck out. He is there. He can't do it all the time. Eventually you're going to get scored on. But he gives the defense confidence that if we make a play, it doesn't work out, we got one guy back in the net that can do it. And actually, Logan Turnus of Ohio State did the same thing because Ohio State was a little helter-skelter, turnovers, and Michigan State got a lot of chances. They had a lot of chances, Jim, to make it 2-0, 3-0. My friend Rob Woodward, the broadcaster from Michigan State, we all said after 2 periods it should have been 3-0, and we shouldn't be this nervous. But you give a team a life like Ohio State had life, and you never know. Even if they're the 7th place team, they can still do it. They did it last week against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's still suffering the impacts. And this could have been a tough night if Augustine had not been great.
And the level of belief for Ohio State for a team with a terrible record, with the way they played at the end of the year, for a moment costing Wisconsin the regular season championship, but then making it hard for Michigan State to clinch it. Played both Michigan State and Wisconsin toe-to-toe down the stretch. Then they go and they take 2 out of 3 in Madison last week. Huge upset. And they came in here with belief.
Sure.
Michigan State only had 60 minutes to prove it was the better team on a 2-week layoff. And Ohio State had just kind of found something lately.
The last month and a half.
Which in this sport, when that happens, like St. Louis Blues a few years ago, when you dial in, sometimes it's just hell on wheels, and that's what Ohio State
Blues were last place in December 31st, and won the Stanley Cup. And Ohio State came in here with nothing to lose. They were playing with house money. We have basically turned our season around, and Jim, back in early...
2 wins away from getting the NCAA tournament.
I know it. All they had to do... And just to get to the final,
it was conceivable.
Yeah. And they play Minnesota or Michigan next weekend, and they do the same thing. And now a 7th place team is in the championship, is in the NCAA tournament. And somebody, because they're in, probably get 13, 14 to power-wise is knocked out. So that would have, a lot of teams would have said, no, don't get Ohio State going here because they could knock out a team that maybe deserves it, but because they're not in position to do it with the pairwise, they could get the short end of it.
And that was the version of Ohio State that Michigan State saw today.
Yeah.
And Ohio State made Michigan State work.
They did.
Face-offs were equal. Shots were about equal. Grade A scoring chances, Michigan State might have had a little bit of an edge.
Yeah.
Ohio State was blocking a lot of shots like they do, but this game was tight. And for those of you that didn't see it, Michigan State takes a 1-0 lead with Daniel Russell early and a nice little play by Dorwart, setting him up. I thought it was a deflection at first, but I think he fed him and had a nice play there to finish that one. Ohio State comes back, ties it up 1-1, and 13 seconds later, Michigan State wins a face-off with the number 4 line. Shouty wins a face-off,
right?
And Tanner Kelly sends it along the boards. The goalie goes behind the goal to play it, plays it back into the corner. Kelly's already there. Kelly wins a battle in the corner and dekes, I think, a defenseman behind the goal line and kind of trickles a pass out there to Nienhuis, the captain, who's been here through it all. And Nienhuis, not a high goal-scoring defenseman, drills it, game winner, 2-1, and eruption.
I know.
But Kelly doing the work, Nienhuis getting the goal.
4th line, exactly what you said, yeah.
And the 4th line's been doing it all year. And that's
they have.
That's emblematic of Michigan State's depth this year,
Yeah.
which has been a difference maker.
Yeah, there's no one line on Michigan State that you say, you got to stop, because they've got three really good lines, and you throw in that fourth line with Shouty, Kelly, and Tommy Ministo. That line forechecks. It frustrates the opposition in their own zone, and they did it in the third period there with about 4 minutes left. That it was like, is Ohio State ever going to get this puck out to get their goalie out? But that line kept it going back and forth, and the goal you would think was going to be maybe Dorwart or Russell. Or look at how many times that Red Savage had breakaways or shots right by the net. Instead, it's Nash Nienhaus, but that's what you do. Kelly gets the puck, sends it out to Nienhaus, and you just shoot it. Sometimes Coop goes right in. That was the goal that we reviewed because they thought that Shouty, number 13, was in front of the net and in the crease. He was in the crease, he moved out, but he never really touched Turnus. Turnus was convinced that he got interfered with. They looked at it, and this was a quick review compared to the last one, and they said, good goal, and the crowd was erupted there, and from then on, it was like, we're in the lead, can we keep it now? And the Spartans played pretty good defense. There were a lot of bite your fingernails off moments, but again, they did in the last minute and a half when the goalie pulled, when Michigan State has been vulnerable the last several years with that, they basically knocked the puck loose, got it out, and prevented Ohio State from really mounting a strong attack in the last minute and a half.
After Michigan State took that 2-1 lead, and then they tied it up 2-2, right? Was that one, or did that happen later?
They tied it up,
and that was disallowed,
and that was the
on
disallowed
an offside.
goal for offside.
And it was called down. They have Dan Sturgis up here. He's on the Michigan State staff. He watches for replays, and it was an offside coming over the blue line before the goal. Really had nothing to do with the goal, but on a technicality, they had it reviewed, and it didn't seem like Nightingale necessarily saw it when it happened. Sturgis calls it down, they get it reviewed, they look at it, and of course that gets overturned. Nightingale says, hey, the game is so fast these days, that's why we have to have review.
Yeah, exactly.
Michigan State fortunate there. 10 years ago, that's not reviewed, and they might still be playing.
You'd be going in overtime, yeah.
But Sturgis up there,
yeah.
I mean, that's because you got to make a call to review it, and if it doesn't turn out your way, you lose a timeout.
Yeah.
So you talk about there's pressure to call that one down.
Yeah.
What do you know about Sturgis? What do you know about him? What do you know much about him or his whole situation?
Well,
in that role.
He's one of three Sturgises that have played here. His dad, John, played in the 70s. He was on that 76 team that almost beat Minnesota here with Herb Brooks as a coach. And had they won that game, they would have gone to the NCAA tournament and probably won it all.
Was that in this building
team.
or?
It was this building. Oh yeah. It's one of the most heartbreaking losses Michigan State has ever had.
What year was that?
1976. And Minnesota won the title that year. And Michigan State went into it was a 2-game total goal series. They were tied the first game, tied the second game, went into overtime. And Minnesota won it on some shot, I think right in this end zone here. And that was a heartbreaker because that was the year of Ross, Rice, Cope, and Sturgis. They were on this great power play that everybody was just like talking about. Anyhow, Sturgis went to school here. He now lived in Madison. The two kids, A.J. Sturgis, defenseman, and Dan Sturgis, they both came to Michigan State, even though they lived in Madison. They followed their father, and then Sturgis played on the NCAA team in 07. And over the last 3 years, he's been Michigan State's video coach. And everybody now has a video coach and people up top to do that, to make sure that if there's a play they can challenge and call back a goal or get a goal, that the puck was in, or get a major penalty on the other team, because that's called quite often. That's what you need those guys for. And the NHL is all over that too. In the NHL, though, you better be careful, because if you make a challenge and the referees review it and it's not allowed, you get a minor penalty. So a lot of times a goal will be scored against you, and you'll say, I think that was offside. Can we challenge it? And if they do, and they're wrong, guess what? Now they got to kill a power play. So sometimes they just say, let's just leave it and go from there. Don't give the other team the opportunity. But yeah, the video coaches are really prominent now in hockey at all levels, pretty much.
There were 3 reviews today. Michigan State had a goal that was disallowed because of goaltender interference, but each one of those reviews were key in a low-scoring game, and Michigan State getting that offside, getting that goal disallowed. Yeah. After Michigan State took the lead and was protecting the lead, Ohio State connected on a few stretch passes.
Oh, they did. Yeah, you notice that. Yeah, from the behind the net to the right wing spot coming up, and the goaltender. Turnus basically would get the puck and he would shoot it down the right side, and there was a guy always there, so it was a set play, and that's the way to get into the zone easy, and then you wait for your guys to come in and you try to create a scoring chance.
Not necessarily their style in the first 40 minutes. Would you agree?
No.
It's something that they turn out when they're desperate.
Yeah, and you could see that they were basically, the word used to be pot hanging, and that's like send a guy out at center ice and we'll defend and maybe we'll get a break and we can shoot the puck for a breakaway. Ron Mace used to hate that.
Or cherry picking in basketball.
Cherry picking, exactly. And that used to be one of the things that if you're behind a goal or two, you may want to take a chance on doing that. You know, you may get scored on, you may end it, but that's almost better sometimes than pulling your goalie. But a lot of coaches are conservative, and it's like, I'm not sure you want to do that. But they were doing it, but the Spartans' defense was good because they see that guy there. They weren't right on him, but they released back so that he didn't have a clear lane to the net. And guys were coming back, and that's what Michigan State's done this year very well over the last couple, is because their defense is better at coming back. They're not a great defensive team, but they're much more structured than they have been over the last 5-10 years. And now with the upgrade offense and a stout goaltender, that's what turns into a winnable program and a winnable team.
What do you call it? Pot what? Pot what? Not cherry picking. Pot what?
What did I just say?
Anyway, but like in the old days, the college game allowed the two-line pass, right? And the NHL did not, like in the 80s. Two-line pass was legal in college hockey, right?
Yeah, it was. In fact, back in the day, this is like in the 70s, when you could skate over the blue line and shoot the puck in. You didn't have to skate over the red line. So the red line didn't even exist in college hockey. But again, that you could go two-line passes and stuff like that. NHL didn't. NHL needed to open it up, and they did, and now look what they've done. Now, when that first started, you had guys behind the net, and all of a sudden the guy was way up there, boom, throwing these long passes. What happens sometimes is the defense knows what's coming up. They pick them off, and they go in, and they score on a turnover. And so coaches are like, well, we'll do it, but we don't want to do it all the time because the other team will defend it better.
Let's go back to the time when Michigan played here in the regular season. Michigan had a lot of odd man rushes and breakaways with long stretch passes. And Michigan State got that corrected and won the next night in Ann Arbor, and then won again in Ann Arbor, and then won in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. What happened in that first meeting that they found those holes with those stretch passes against Michigan State? And can Michigan, if they play Michigan State again, whether it be here next week or even in the NCAA tournament, can Michigan find that again against Michigan State?
I don't think so. I think Michigan State realizes that they were just a little step slower. And those goals weren't even good goals. They were just bing, 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 boom. I mean, they weren't Augustine's fault necessarily, but again, they were like, really, this shot goes in? Because most of the time those don't go in. But they got behind them, they used their speed, and they outmanned the Spartans in front of the net, and they had a wide open net guy. And sometimes it doesn't go in, but for Michigan that night, it was like 4-0 or 3-0 in the first period.
Now, as far as, Ohio State had those stretch passes going there for a moment, but then I thought like in the last 6 or 7 minutes, with Ohio State needing to put on pressure down by a goal, I thought Michigan State had the territorial advantage.
Yeah, they did.
There in that last 7 minutes, like not even really going back into a shell. They just kind of, and it's not like Michigan State had a ton of scoring chances out of it, but Ohio State was having trouble getting it out of their own end. I don't know if that's the Michigan State conditioning we're hearing about.
I was going to say, I would bring that up because a lot of people have told me their conditioning is so good that they basically think in a third period with a 1-1 tie, 2-1 lead, they can outplay the other team with energy. And it looked like Ohio State, when they have to go back and pick the puck up again and constantly do that. And Michigan State's credit, they didn't ice the puck that much. They iced it a couple times. But flip the puck in the zone and make them go back. And it's the old saying, go 200 feet to get a scoring chance. Don't let them in the neutral zone get a turnover because it doesn't take long to get near the goal. And people around the net can obviously get a scoring chance. That's what they did in the last 5-6 minutes, especially the last minute and a half. When the goalie was built, when you thought they had an advantage in players, and it didn't seem to feel that way. It seemed like Michigan State was just playing again, a little helter-skelter, but they were banging people, they were chipping pucks, they were using their sticks, they were blocking passes, and just getting the puck out. And that hasn't happened. Last year started to change, but in the last 5-10 years, that has been a big problem with the Spartans getting the puck over the line and in the safety, whereas they would get the puck near the line, lose it, go back, and bing, 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 they get scored on. So even in the last 2 minutes, I was thinking, Ohio State still has a chance here if they get that puck behind the net and get a guy in front, because boy, the defense is like seeing guys left and right. Who do I cover? Where do I go? You hope that the team you're trying to get a goal against is doing that. And yet Michigan State was very steady on defense. They shot the puck off the glass, off the boards, just to get it out into safety. So I give Michigan State credit for that defensive style in the last minute and a half.
And the conditioning, when Nightingale was putting the program together, or even at Media Day here in the summer, he really thought that conditioning was going to be a strength for the team. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. I mean, every team in the country conditions.
Right.
But he said, no, we put these guys through the paces pretty hard.
Yeah.
Last year he said that as well, expecting for that to become a strength of the program. And it has. You see the way they play in the third period in a lot of these games, and the way they planned their work and worked their plan in the conditioning aspect of it all. You hear about, was it Will Morlock?
Yeah.
And some of the things that they do. Apparently not every program does it quite the way Michigan State does scientifically, but also the sweat that they put in for this reason. And you're seeing it on the ice. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, well, Will Morlock was at the program, the National Team Development Program. And when Augustine found out that Nightingale was getting the job and bringing Moreland with him, he was like, that's one of the things, that'd be great because he's a good trainer. And now, training for a goalie is different than training for a forward or defenseman. But that's how much he thought that this could help him by conditioning, training, whatever. And what I've noticed the last year or two is this team, after a game, goes up and lift weights. When we were in Madison 2 weeks ago and they won the title on Friday, we were standing outside the Michigan State locker room interviewing the players and Nightingale, and right next to me were the players with the big ball, throwing it down, lifting it up. They were actually doing stretches. They were getting the whatever is in your body out after a game where you're working hard and stuff like that. And they're on the bikes. They're doing all this stuff. And it used to be, get dressed, let's get out of here, boom. But no, they were there another 20 minutes just working on that. And during the regular season, we've had interviews, and we've had it maybe cut short a question or two because they got to go lift. And I'm thinking, this team works hard in practice, works hard during the games, and then they're rewarded with a great victory. And what's their reward? Let's go lift, let's work out. And yet they're buying into it because they know that the physical aspect of the game is so important.
Yeah, the science of it, that's what you're supposed to do. I guess legendarily, didn't Sergei Fedorov, wasn't he known for lifting weights after games?
Yeah,
like
he was.
He was
the
one
Russian
of the first.
sister. Yeah, the Russians used to do that way back when, and a lot of the Russian players that came over were like shocked. Aren't we going to lift weights, do whatever? We have to keep going. We have to get strong. And they were like, boy, this system is a little bit lax, and yet all of a sudden it came out where now even players stretch before the game, work, they're really going, and then after a game they do the same thing to get the juices out, and so they're ready for the next game. Now this was a game on Friday night, and they were going to play Saturday, and what they've done, Jim, is they don't have morning skates as much. And I noticed this in the NHL, because the games, being traveling in the NHL and in college, because you're working so hard, then you play. Why get up in the morning on a Friday and go skate and then go home and take a nap? Why not just rest? Say that for the trainer Dave Carrier, who was here for a long time, he was basically the last 2 years against that. He didn't see any reason why that would help. And sometimes it's more of in my mindset, I need to get the skates on and get going a little bit. And then now players are suddenly realize we don't have to do that. We get to the rink so early and we get to skate that why expend that energy? And what happens if you go back and have your meal and you take a nap like all players do if you can't sleep? And so now you're really tired when you get to the rink.
If you can't get to sleep. Yeah, interesting. And just to wrap it up, getting back to the seniors, Tanner Kelly and Nienhuis, two seniors that have been here through the dark times.
That's right.
And like Nightingale said last November, one of his first games here, he said there are probably only 2,000 people in the arena. For those two seniors and what they've gone through and what they've seen, for them to produce the game winner on a night when it was lit like it hasn't been in 20 or 30 years, what do you think those seniors are thinking to themselves? We talked with Nash Nienhuis a little bit after the game. Tanner Kelly was not available for interviews, just two players. What do you think? How do you know these guys?
Well, the other one too is Mueller, Nico Mueller. He's been here 5 years. And he wanted to come back this year if they would have him, because he just said, I sense something good from last year's 18-2 season and disappointment of losing to Minnesota in the semifinals. So he comes back, and now he's assistant captain. But again, all those seniors, along with Jeremy Davidson, those guys know what they went through, and now how much this feels different. Different coaches, new players, and everybody gets along. Facilities are outstanding. Why would you ever want to leave? It's one of those things, but I think that really has had a lot to do with the leadership they provided, because what they've gone through and what it means now to have a competitive team. Everything's working. The coaching staff, they go through a wall for them, and everything is good, and their parents are coming to games, and instead of going to talk to their parents after a loss, and their parents going, you tried hard, it was good. Now it's like, wow, what a great game. You're in first place. And that's amazing that Michigan State, after second year of Nightingale, finished first place, and now they're going to play for a championship next week.
Amazing. 2 weeks ago.
Another championship.
2 weeks ago, when Michigan State clinched the regular season Big Ten championship at SpartanMag.com, my headline was, "A Sleeping Giant Awakens."
Yes.
In the headline. Well,
Totally.
if you wonder what a sleeping giant sounds like when it wakes up, you just heard it tonight.
It was, yeah. And next week, if it's Minnesota or Michigan, probably especially Michigan, this place is going to be a zoo. It's going to be loud, and it could be one of the most eclectic nights in Spartan hockey history.
And if it is Michigan, well, we'll talk about that when the time comes, because the game is being played right now, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be by the time you watch this. So we'll just cut it off right there. The great Neil Koepke. It's great to talk hockey with you. College hockey. The great one. For Neil Koepke, my name is Jim Comparoni. Been watching the VCast from Munn Ice Arena with the Spartans. SpartanMag.com.